All right, so the LILJ is back for another edition of the Weekly Crossbar Podcast. I am Ellis Joshua, and joined alongside me as always is Coach Wink. Coach Wink, how are you doing here today on this Good Friday?
It is a good, I think it's an excellent Friday. I think it should be changed to Excellent Friday because after the week that we just had, I mean, I'm just looking at our list. We had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. We covered 18 games in the last 7 days.
Man, we were all over the place.
It was so much fun, dude. We saw some great lacrosse. We had a good time. Saw some great coaching. Um, we'll be talking about all this, but I'll let you start it off. And on last Thursday, April 10th, when we drove out to Mount Sinai, New York, Spolinaville, I call it.
Yeah, so we got to go back to last week on the 10th, like you said. So we were out at Mount Sinai covering the girls against Rocky Point in a Class C battle. Two teams that, of course, are going to be vying for the playoffs in Suffolk County. And that was a game where goals were certainly at a premium. That was a 5-4 game in favor of Rocky Point. They ended up coming away with the win. And actually, they were down in that game 2-0 early in the first quarter, but they held Mount Sinai to just 2 goals the rest of the way, and they prevailed in that one. So I think we got to start when we're talking about Rocky Point. We got to start with Breezy Henke in that game. I mean, what a game she had in the net for Rocky Point, and she made 8 saves in the game, but because the game was so close and like it was really up for grabs between both teams. She had a couple of really timely and clutch saves down the stretch in that game when Sinai had a chance to potentially tie up that game. I thought Breezy was great and like she just stepped up in big moments in that game to keep Rocky Point in front down the stretch.
We've seen Breezy play well for the last 4 years. And last Thursday was no difference. She stepped up, but the kid who on the other side for Mount Sinai, Catherine Arrington,
Hmm.
I thought she had a great game, and I thought she did the same thing, keeping Mount Sinai close, and that's why it was a 5-4 game because both it was definitely what we call a goalie war because both
Yeah.
goaltenders showed up and played awesome.
Yeah, definitely. That the way that game was going, I mean, again, it could have gone either way. But Rocky Point, they just got able to get one more goal than Mount Sinai to come away with that win. But for Rocky Point also, Kaylee Moeller, she scored 2 goals and she was a big factor on the draw circle for Rocky Point. Cadence Adamo, she had 2 goals as well. I believe the goal that she actually scored ended up being the go-ahead goal that put Rocky Point in front for good in that game. And then defensively, Lillian Wood. Lillian Wood, I mean, we've talked about her game before, Coach Wink. She's a player that, for Rocky Point, she plays primarily defense, but on the club side, she's also more of an offensive player as a midfielder. But defensively, for Rocky Point, I thought she was awesome. And there was one play in particular where she actually saved the ball from going out of bounds, and it ended up being a turnover on Mount Sinai. She was hustling to keep it in bounds and just kind of flipped it back into the field of play before it hit the end line. And Rocky Point, they were able to come up with the ground ball and take it the other way. But I thought that was a big play in the game. So I thought Lillian Wood was really good defensively and also clearing the ball as well.
Yeah, I was very impressed with her. Her foot speed was impressive. I mean, the the players that always step up for Rocky Point, like Fiona Vu and obviously Lamoureux and players like that, played well. But it really came down to a defensive struggle for both teams because offensively, both teams were having trouble breaking each other's, backer zones. So I thought that from that perspective, the defensive side and the goaltending made the difference. That's why it was a 1 goal game. That game could have went either way. Probably Rocky Point probably had a little bit of the edge as far as possessing the ball. But I thought defensively, both teams played great.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you're Rocky Point and you're told going into that game you'll give up 4 goals, obviously you'll take that. Sinai the same thing. If you told them they were gonna only going to give up 5 goals, you'll take that any day of the week.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the win went to Rocky Point, but that game was definitely a 50-50 coin flip. The cool thing about that, what we've been doing, which I love, is we're finding great games that are back to back that aren't 2 hours apart. Meaning
Right. That's
distant.
the key. That's how you maximize covering games.
Yeah, like we were lucky. We went from Sinai to Smithtown West to see at the time it was a battle of the unbeaten, right? Neither
Yeah.
team had lost
Yeah, they
going
were
into
both,
this game.
yep, both undefeated going into that matchup.
Both, I would say, favorites to make it to their county championship game. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying I would give them the nod. I would say Smithtown West would get the nod with West Islip in the B's right now. And I'd
Mhm.
probably go Bayport Sayville in the C's, but anything can happen. We'll talk more as we talk about some of the other teams we saw this week. But I thought that was an excellent game for both teams. What do you think of that game?
Yeah, 100%. That was two high-level teams, two contending teams going at it. Like you said, both undefeated going into that matchup. And it wound up being Bayport who came away with the victory to stay unbeaten. So they took down Smithtown West 9-6 in that game. But for a while there, again, that game was there for the taking by either side. But Bayport, they were just able to make a few more plays in the end to end up coming away with the win. So, I mean, in that matchup for Bayport, some of the players that stepped up, which, the usual suspects, the ones that are no surprise, like Ava Mine, she had 3 goals in that game. Aubrey Eisfeld, she also had a hat trick as well. I thought Junior Sarah Richard, she played well in that game. She had a couple of really nice assists early on in that game. Just like great distributing the ball. She was 1 and 2 in that matchup. Kaylee Bruckner, I kind of thought she was like the unsung hero, so to speak, in that game, especially with what she was able to do on the defensive side of the ball for Bayport. So I thought she really stepped up as well. But it was a really good game. I think it definitely lived up to the hype. And like we said, those are two teams that we're expecting to make deep runs come the postseason.
Yeah, I think one of the important things that these young ladies and young men in the high school level have to realize is you have to buy into the aspect of what's going to help your team win. And there's certain players on each team that might have to play a role this year, that next year will be a different role, but this year might be defensively in between the 30s, or your job is to shut down what they're the other team's top scorer, and they don't need you to score in this particular game. And I thought Bruckner and Shanahan are those two kids for Bayport that they play a role and they do it real well. Well, meanwhile, both of them can score goals as well, but they need them to be more defensive minded right now. And
Mhm.
both of them have stepped up for Bayport, and that's what's kept them, I think, undefeated.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you mentioned Emma Shanahan. Yeah, we'll talk about her a little bit later in the other Bayport game that we covered just a couple of days ago. But yeah, you're right. Like there's certain players that, yes, they may be skilled as offensive players, but depending on the type of team and the type of talent that you have around you, you may be asked to do other things that can help the team win. And those are two players that definitely do that on a consistent basis for the Phantoms.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for the young ladies, the younger kids that aren't varsity athletes yet, and the varsity athletes that might not understand this, that you might have to play a role to help your team win. And it might not be scoring goals, even though you might be a goal scorer in some parts of your game. You might have to give that up to make the team better. And
Right.
I think Bruck and Shanahan are two kids that have done that for Bayport. And their success at that school and every school needs those players. I talk about it every time I talk about an experience I had as a dad when my son played. They won a state championship, and they had two kids on the team that without those two kids, they wouldn't have won the state championship. And it was because they were the glue. I call it the glue. They were the guys that picked up every ground ball, that helped clear the ball, that defended, that was shut down defenders. And they were the short stick D middies. So I think it's very important if your parents are listening to this, is to make your kids realize there's times that you have to play a different role than you normally play. And the success of your team comes from that or the non-success of your team. And I did notice a few athletes that aren't taking on those roles, and it's hurting their team because they need it.
Hmm.
So I think when the coaches tell you, I need you to do this, just listen because it's for the good of the team. So I
Right.
think that's a very important factor that we noticed on a positive side for Bayport. I did notice, and I'm not going to bring up any negative, on the negative side for another team. And it's very important that everybody is kind of intertwined and glued together. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
spoke has
It,
to have all the little spokes. It's for the wheel to turn.
yeah, it's all about having the collective buy-in.
100%. The teams that are going to go far in the playoffs and make it through the states are the teams that are willing to do anything to get the W.
Right, exactly.
Sometimes it's just GBs. Sometimes it's just lockdown defense. Sometimes they need you to score some goals or make some feeds. So I think you're seeing that with Bayport right now. They seem really in tune right now. That squad seems in tune. Well, last year I mentioned it. They didn't seem in tune. But
Hmm.
now they're moving in the right direction. We'll see because we got a big one coming in a couple weeks, how they look against their crosstown rivals. But
Yeah.
it was cool. It was very cool. We had a great Thursday, and then Friday we had a huge game of the week.
Yeah, Friday we were over at Wantagh High School covering the boys against Garden City, two of the top public schools on the island. Two teams, of course, that are very much in contention for state championships in their respective classes. And Wantagh at the time going into that game, they were undefeated. They were 3-0 going into that game. Garden City was 3-1. Their loss, though, not on the island. So undefeated on the island. But but Garden City, they ended up prevailing in that game 12-9. But we've talked about it, Coach Wink, at times, and like I'll mention it on the broadcast on live streams, depending on how a game is going. But as we know, this sport is a game of runs, and that game showed exactly why that it is a game of runs, because in the early stages of that game, Garden City looked like they could end up coasting. They jumped out to a 3-0 lead, and it looked like they were really gaining command of that game. But we know that Wantagh offense, and we know how explosive and prolific it can be. And they ended up rattling off six straight goals to take a 6-3 lead. But I thought a key turning point in that game, I think, was really Garden City's close to the second quarter because they turned a 6-3 deficit into a 6-5 deficit. So you trim that down to one. And then Wantagh, they did try to fend them off a bit in the third quarter to try to keep that 1 to 2 goal lead consistently. But then Garden City turned it back on and they grabbed that 3 goal lead again and came away with the win. And Charlie Coster, man.
Yeah,
5 goals in that game. Five
that
and
kid is
one.
he's an
Another
elite
huge
lacrosse
day.
player. I give Lehigh so much credit for recruiting that kid. I said it the first time I ever laid eyes on this kid that this kid is special. He is a special lacrosse player. Lehigh better hold tight. The NIL money that's flowing in the world of football isn't it flowing in the world of lacrosse? But if it was, they'd be shooting checks at this kid. That kid is an absolute baller. Would you agree that he's
A
one of the
hundred.
top 26s we've seen?
Absolutely. He dropped 7 in the Ward Melville game that we covered.
Yeah, he's definitely a special lacrosse player.
Yeah, he really is. He really is. So he had another big day at the office, which you kind of figured going into the game if Garden City was going to win, they would need him to step up, and he did that without question. The face-off X, again, Lucas Cadden, he has a huge advantage going into almost every game you would think for Garden City there. Um, I thought that was a big advantage for GC, which helped them win the game. In the goal, Jake Schlipp. He had 8 saves for Garden City. So you got to give them a ton of credit because Wantaugh's a great team as we know. So whoever won that game, they had to feel good after that game, knowing that they beat a really good opponent.
100%. And I got to give a shout out to my boy Dev Pacione. Um, Now, everybody pronounces it either Pacione or Pacione. What is the correct pronunciation for Devin's last name?
So I've been told the correct pronunciation is Passion because I
Okay.
was one of those people that was saying Passion, but it
Okay.
is Passion.
Okay. I'm gonna text his dad and get confirmation. His dad is the head men's coach at Merchant Marine Academy. I got to tell you something. If you're an attackman and you're 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, 14 years old, you need to watch Devin Passion play lacrosse. This kid has a college level IQ for the game of lacrosse. He does things in a game to the naked eye, to the average fan, you don't even know what he's doing. He puts himself in spots to be successful before he gets the ball. And what I mean by that, he did a play in the game. The ball was coming from the wing from I think Martini, and he put himself behind the cage probably about one step to the left side where the defenseman was on ball side that was covering him. So when he caught the ball, the defenseman had to make a decision. Do I go behind the cage? Do I have time, or is he going to get top side, or do I come top side? He hangs up defensemen all the time. Have you noticed that? He always has defenders hung up.
Yeah, he's always he's always playing one step ahead of his matchup.
It's unbelievable the things he does, and it's all because of his IQ. People talk about lax IQ. Watch this kid play. He is a special talent. Again, I'll go to Nova grabbing that kid. Nova and Lehigh grabbed two amazing lacrosse players that were playing in that game,
Yep,
right?
no doubt.
And the
No
other
doubt.
Nova kid who played real well was the
Yeah,
Nicholson.
yeah, Joe Nicholson too.
He
Nicholson,
played awesome in that
yeah,
game.
he was 3-2 in that game, but he also made some great plays on defense as well.
Yeah,
He put together a complete game.
I remember his sisters. Their sisters were great players. The
Yeah.
Nicholson
Yeah,
family,
they graduated 2 years ago.
yeah, they were 23s, I believe, right?
Yeah, 23s.
Yeah, they were both very good. The twin girls. Um, where'd they end up? One went to Siena, I believe, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Olivia Nicholson went to Siena.
Was it Siena and Quinnipiac?
And
I
then
don't know
no,
why
no,
I'm
Jacksonville.
Jacksonville.
Julia
Jacksonville.
Nicholson.
Okay. So not to get off track, but I think it's so important for the young lacrosse players to watch because he was doing things that college kids do or are taught in college. So obviously his dad has a huge impact on his knowledge of the game. His dad's been coaching college. His dad coached at St. John's. So obviously he's been very well educated in the sport. But it's obvious when you watch him play, I'm like, this kid's a player. I am very curious to see and they're playing a tough schedule. Obviously, they had Ridgefield
Yeah.
and they took it on the chin. Who else beat them? Someone Pequot beat them.
Massapequa.
Yeah, well, Pequot's a real good team. But I like that they have this power conference now because every
Oh,
game's a great game.
it's great for Nassau County that they got that going back to last year.
It's even better this year, I think, because they expanded.
Yeah, yeah, they added more teams this year. And it's always good too, because you get a good number of non-league games in Nassau County. So like even besides just the teams that you'll play in the Power Conference, you can set up games against really good opponents that are either not from that are from like either Suffolk County or teams off the island.
Yeah, like they like Manhasset and Wantagh played Ridgefield,
Yep.
right?
That's,
A lot of these guys played Darien.
yep.
So they're playing top level Connecticut schools. I
Yeah.
know I saw GC,
Yorktown was Yorktown.
Yorktown's a Westchester program.
Yep.
That was South Side. But
Mhm.
GC just played Rye. Cold Spring Harbor just played Rye. GC just beat Bridgewater Raritan, which is a very good Jersey program. So obviously these guys they're playing the top level teams. That's what I love about, especially like Garden City. They play arguably one of the better public school schedules. So they play really quality opponents. It just helps your team prepare when you start to get into the grind of the playoffs. And if you're lucky enough to get into the state playoffs, I mean, playing those teams are only going to help you, only going to make you better.
Yeah, that's what shapes you for the playoffs.
100%. We're singing it with the girls and the boys.
Yeah, definitely.
So as we jump, so that was Friday. We were off for the weekend because Saturday was miserable.
Yeah, Saturday was not pretty. That was not a day to be out doing
No,
anything.
no, we need to keep my boy E healthy so that he can cover all these games. But we did have, what did we have? We had a triple header on Monday. We went to two, and Jill went to one. We started with Farmingdale Southside. What was your take on the Farmingdale Southside girls game?
Yeah, so Southside, they definitely left me impressed the way they played in that game against Farmingdale. They won that game 18-9. But how about on the offensive side, the duo of Annie Chimenti and Charlotte Rathjen? So Chimenti at attack, she's an unbelievable distributor of the ball. She had 8 assists in that game. And the overwhelming majority were to Charlotte Rathjen, who scored 7 goals for Southside. So she was 7-0. Chimenti was 8-1, 1-8
1-8.
for 9 points. So I mean, you're talking about a combined 16 points between those two, and
They
they
had a
scored
day.
18 goals.
Southside looked really good. I was very impressed. I was impressed with those two, with Sky Corton.
Yeah, the
Um,
sophomore Courtney, she had a hat trick.
she looked very good. Lizito, the defender,
Defense, baby.
she's a 27. She was a shutdown defender. I thought she did a
Yeah.
great job.
She had a
Because
really nice play where she there was a caused turnover on a ride on the ride by Southside, and then she ended up scooping up the ground ball and then had the look ahead up to Sienna Conley, and it was basically a breakaway play.
yeah, Southside's going to be a problem. It's Southside is a C this year, right?
Yeah, Southside is a C.
Southside. Okay, I see. I definitely give them the favorite. I would say that they're probably. I would make them the 1 seed in the C, and what Wantagh the 2 seed.
Right. And they did play each other, and Southside did win in overtime.
Okay, so that game was a good one. Okay, good. I like that. I like that. That'll bring us. Hopefully, that we'll see that again. You know what I mean? If we see that again, that would be sick. Overtime and county championship. Come on.
Yeah, you can't ask for more than that.
Yeah. Instagram Live.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
And then for Farmingdale, they're studs. Obviously,
Oh,
they got Bresky. How many Bresky have? I saw she had a few before I left.
yeah, Bresky in that game, she was 1-2 in that game.
Gotcha.
We
Yeah.
got to talk about though for the Dalers, the young gun, Molly McNamara,
Oh my God. What is
an
she, eighth grade?
eighth grader, scored 4 goals in that game. She's a
She
midfielder too, plays
she is
both
a
sides of the
20
field.
29, and
Yep.
she is scoring 4 goals against Southside. You're not talking about, against Coach Wink and Ellis in the backyard.
No, that she could do in her sleep.
Yeah,
But
that she'd score 4 goals in a minute.
yeah, but I thought she played awesome. And again, I love seeing young guns step up on big time teams and playing meaningful minutes. I mean, we talked about last week with Nicole Manalakis on Ward Melville and their club teammates, by the way, her and McNamara. But but yeah, seeing McNamara for Farmingdale, like I love seeing stuff like that. Seeing eighth graders step up in big games.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see young guns step up in big games, and it's even cooler when you see how comfortable they are because you're like, how are
Yeah,
you so comfortable in seventh and eighth grade playing with seniors?
yeah.
Girls are about to go to college, and you're in the middle school.
Yeah, I mean, she's going up. Think about it. Like your opposition is a UNC commit, Charlotte Rathjen.
I know, and she's not intimidated one iota.
No, not at all.
It's impressive. It's very impressive.
It's immensely impressive.
Yeah, no, we enjoy it. We love to see that these young guns. We'll talk about one more towards the end of the week. But so we didn't go and cover the game that Jill covered, but Jill covered a doozy, huh?
Yeah, yeah. We had Jill at the Syosset Port Washington game, and that was some game. So Port Washington, they prevailed 12-11, but at one point they were up 9-4 in that game. And then Syosset, they make a furious comeback. They actually ended up taking the lead. So Charlie Kaplan, she had the go-ahead goal for Syosset, which I believe put them up 11-10. But then Port, they ended up answering back with a couple goals. Catherine Carmen, I believe her free position is what ended up being the ultimate game winner in that game. And for Carmen in that game, she had 7 goals, so she had a big day. So Port did end up hanging on, but Jill was certainly had a great game to cover.
You know what? I think that's another, it's funny. Kat Carmen is a kid that everybody should go watch. She's another very high level kid. She's so skilled. She's also a kid who has a really good IQ, plays the game the right way. I love watching that kid play. I got eyes on her last year in the playoffs, and I was like, this kid's a gem. Virginia Tech got a gem.
Yeah, I love the way she plays too. I think she just plays the game at her own pace and like she's always cool, calm, collected, like never rattled, never phased. Like and she's someone that I feel like when I'm watching her play, like you can tell she's thoroughly enjoying the game and having fun.
Yeah, yeah, she's like Reese King. Reese King always gave me that where she's always smiling. I don't know how much she
Yeah.
was smiling in the second half of the game we covered, but she
Yeah,
she
well,
does
well,
have that same type of. We'll talk about that in a little while, but any other stats from that game? I didn't get to see any of that.
yeah. So also in that game, if we want to talk about Syosset, so Julie Shaughnessy, she was 4-2 for the Braves. I mentioned Kaplan, she had the go-ahead goal down the stretch at that point. Jaden Stadler, she had 3 goals. Also Lily Silvera with 3 goals as well.
Yeah, I see the players of the game. I'm looking at them now. It's Cassidy and Capobianco for Port Washington.
Hmm.
So I'm just looking on the screen. We keep track of all this so that we know from the game. And it was Carmen, Cassidy, and Capobianco as the POGs for the game that Jill covered. That game was at Port. And they said the Port Washington athletic director and their athletic department have been great hosts, and we appreciate it because we have had some issues with some school districts not allowing our media on the field. And to be honest with you, I want to let people know that if that's the case, we're just not going to go to those facilities. We're not going to stand behind a net to cover a game because it's not fair to the fans that want to see these highlights of all these great players. So in the
Yeah.
future, let your athletic department know. We call ahead, but they always have supervisors that are a little crazy. So just a heads up for those people out there. Let your supervisors know that we're there to just promote the kids.
Yeah. All right, so that's going to wrap up part 1 of this edition of the Weekly Crossbar. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back shortly for part number 2. Thanks for everyone that tunes in.